Good morning again. My name is John Hack. I'm TravelClick Senior Industry Analyst, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning to talk about the future of the central reservation systems. Before we have the panel introduce themselves, could we just see a show of hands? How many of you actually think within 5 years there will not be a CRS? Show of hands. That's good news, panelists. I don't know yet. In 5 years, CRS will be around, and we think they're going to continue to evolve. Can I see a show of hands that say they'll be around in 5 years, but they're going to continue to evolve? Great, we have a consensus. Okay. So with that, we're short on time. We are great on input. We have a very passionate panel. And first of all, I'd like you to introduce yourself, panel.
Sure. My name is Tim Kinsella. I'm Senior Vice President of Global Sales for Amadeus, representing the Central Reservation System, Enterprise PMS, and our payments platform.
I'm Tom Winter. I'm Product Manager for the Synixis Central Reservation System.
I'm Estella Hale. I'm the Vice President of Product at SHR. Our main product is Windsurfer CRS.
Hello, Sean Monahan. I'm the CEO of Pegasus and a board member as well.
Estella, I must say thank you for putting up with 4 men on the panel this morning.
My pleasure.
We're definitely letting you go first. And I
Sounds
know this
good.
is a question that you're very passionate about. So how is your CRS addressing the path of personalization within the booking process to drive loyalty and revenue?
Well, let's start by looking at the sources that are influencing personalization. And we heard a lot about personalization in our previous panel. So we know it's something that everyone is interested about and seeing, okay, how do we get there? So some of the sources are, of course, the predictive mobile apps and the conversational marketing that our guests are receiving. So if you think of those sources, our guests are, on the one side, expecting personalization, but they also want full control of their profile and the information that we hold. So I think as a CRS, we are this guest-centric system that delivers information that is needed to drive those bookings. We just happen to power distribution. Because of this, I do foresee a shift, specifically in profile management, to move into CRS, because I do foresee this is something that will allow us to bring that level of personalization. And with all of the data that we have and with all of the UIs that we power, bringing that at the center of the CRS truly makes us that guest-centric system that allows us to deliver it.
Thank you. Tom, at breakfast this morning, it was an impressive and passionate speech about content. And as we know, content continues to be a challenge for hoteliers, as they're required to manage content in a variety of manners. APIs, we heard a great endorsement for Excel this morning, didn't we? Content management systems to all the booking channels. So what are the CRS providers doing to help address this content imperative?
So there has to be a willingness on sort of both sides from a content distribution standpoint. There also needs to be content management capability at its core, and that means translation capability, the actual content itself, as well as the ability to distribute it out. So there's really multiple pillars in my mind as it relates to content management. And some of the key things that at least we're focusing on, at least as it relates to content management, is making sure we're getting that content direct to the points where the hotels wish to distribute it, so that they're not in a situation of either not owning the content, since there are a number of third parties who prefer to own the content themselves, so that the hotels themselves can maintain control of that, but that they're not maintaining multiple controls of the same content. So that's where we're doing things like going direct to the GDS for our content distribution. We just finished our interface with Amadeus, actually, and rolling out with other GDSs as well for direct content distribution, so that the hotels have the ability to own that information and reduce the time to distribution. The worst thing that you can run into is renovate a property, and then it takes a year before that information distributes out to the different distribution systems.
Sean, you bring an interesting perspective to this business, being with a private equity firm about 3 years in the travel industry. So we're kind of looking to you for the future developments in mobile. And so in your view, what does the future of the CRS look like?
I think the world has changed. I think the way you build technology has changed. We've gone from digital, from analog to digital. And I think big picture, when we talk about things like the CRS, channel manager, PMS, I think a lot of those acronyms will fall away as we look 10 years into the future. I think specifically a lot of systems, whether you look to CRS systems or PMS systems or whomever, will probably intend or drive a product strategy by trying to become what I call the cognitive distribution platform in the future. And I think that really means kind of three things. One, connecting and developing deep relationships with your guests. Two, really being the central hub of data and intelligence. And three, really being able to provide scale. And so from the CRS perspective, we do connect through and across most distribution channels. I think that needs to extend probably to some of the key vendors that provide the Internet of Things. We're connecting with guests who are interacting with Alexa or whatever else. I think from a data and business intelligence perspective, I think the CRS has historically always been the main home for availability and rates. I think its data structure needs to evolve and extend to things like dynamic context, static content, and then also guest profiling information. And I think fundamentally the goal is to try and create one platform where a lot of services and applications are built on top of the platform, where hoteliers can go to manage, distribute, and synthesize that information to glean insights and really market to their guests.
So this morning, with our first speaker, we heard a question, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Right? How many times do we have to ask ourselves that? So, Tim, thank you for going last. Sure. Are you sure you wanted to go last?
Yes, absolutely. I have no choice. Yes.
How will you handle simplified payment? How do you foresee, and the big elephant in the room is blockchain and cryptocurrencies, playing into the future state of payment options?
Okay. So first of all, I think let's separate the questions, right? Blockchain, who the heck knows? It's brand new. There's a lot of conjecture out there. I think the market's going to tell us whether it'll be accepted in the long run, and then how you exchange it will follow along. So I don't know. We'll see on blockchain. Regarding payments, though, as far as how to simplify, strangely enough, during my time at MerchantLink, I came to realize that hotel chains have to deal with a incredibly fragmented payment strategy, right? Every country has usually a different gateway provider, and then from e-com to card present, usually different providers. You have Adyen, which is fantastic in the card not present, and then you have 3C. Did I just lose my mic? You have 3C that is very strong in card present, but only in Europe. So what do you do in the United States? And then you have the wild, wild west of Asia Pacific. So I think that the most important thing that can happen is a global provider that crosses international boundaries, is already into alternative payment methods, right? Alipay, massive. China UnionPay, huge card. It just came out of nowhere. So something that crosses international borders and is equally effective in card not present and card present, I think would be dramatic.
Estella, what do you think?
I agree, and I think we do have to separate blockchain from cryptocurrency. I think there is so much, and it's still early, but there is so much that potentially we could gain with blockchain and what that technology will bring us, and not necessarily only tie it to cryptocurrency. And I also think, as we go further into not asking, are you sure, and we go further into that less resistance path to booking, one-click booking, if you will, the holy grail of Amazon, I don't think that's tied to cryptocurrency either. I think it's something that we can achieve.
Yes, Sean.
Yeah, I think on blockchain it's a technology that holds tremendous promise for scale, and I think from a hotelier perspective, coming back to data always being the central to drive your intelligence and what it is you're doing to create a competitive advantage for your business. I think blockchain allows hotelier systems to kind of scale infinitely as you look out into the mobile world. And so specifically, it's very important to always have information on all the looks, not just the books. And so as we look into the future, I think blockchain is a technology that can potentially be utilized to allow hotels to get information and data on the shopping behavior, not just on their direct channel, but also potentially through the OTAs as well. Historically, we've always moved towards push. I think it's important for hotels to move towards seamless, and to do that, you need systems that scale infinitely, and blockchain potentially allows you to do that. I agree that it's probably some time off, but it holds tremendous promise.
Ultimately, do you think it simplifies payment, or do you think it makes payment more complex? You have a view on that?
In cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
I think time will tell. I think we're at the very forefront of this technology. Just speaking cryptocurrency, setting aside blockchain, which of course has application far beyond just financial cryptocurrency. So we'll see. It's all going to be driven by consumer behavior, consumer acceptance, which of course will in turn drive the vendors' acceptance of what they want to pay with. So we'll see.
There was one question that we wanted to ask all of our panelists to answer, and we put them up to a test and say, when you answer this question, you have to be additive to what your colleagues are saying. And the elephant in the room is really around conversion. And what if there was one thing that we could do as an industry? We heard simplified payment, we heard, are you sure, right? So those are off the table. We can't use those. But if there was one piece to this that could be additive to really exponentially increase conversion, what would that be? And Tom, when we spoke this morning at breakfast, I was so impressed with what you talked about. And so I'm going to try to lead with you this time, but if you could get into, your hypothesis on this, because I think it's very interesting to share with the audience.
It sort of takes two parts, and it dovetails nicely from the revenue management discussion earlier, where it's about the fact that you may not always know everything about a guest. So the concept of anonymous personalization comes into play, where leverage the data you can have to better incent the guest to stay, increasing conversion. So if I'm presenting more relevant offers based upon whatever I can know, obviously that the holy grail of that is the fact that I truly know that guest because they've logged in with their loyalty system and they're in that kind of qualified state that they talked about before to sort of defeat parity. But even in an unqualified state, you can be adding value without adding price. And that comes through to the offers that you present, and you can tailor the offers by basic things. The example I used this morning was if I'm geolocating my IP that I'm shopping, present me an offer for an airport transfer, but if I'm geolocated as a local, don't offer me that airport transfer. Maybe offer me a meal, some other particular offer that is just simply more relevant. Because lots of hotels today are selling ancillaries, but how can you optimize that to increase conversion, not just of the booking, but increase conversion of the actual ancillaries, so you're driving higher total RevPAR.
Thank you. Tim, we're not going to make you wait this time, so you can go next.
Tremendous. It's funny. The answer usually comes from the customer, right? And I was with a pretty large chain just last week, and there I was sitting with a VP of distribution, and we were talking about e-commerce, and she was super passionate about it, and she blew my mind when she says, "I want my guests to build a pizza," and I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And she's like, "You go to Domino's, and their e-commerce engine is beautiful. They offer this, what she determined as enterprise personalization. They have a technology that allows somebody to pick a 16-inch pizza, and they want black olives. They know that that's $1 more, and the pizza black olives show up, and I want ham and whatever, and the pizza's being built. The guest is seeing what's going to be delivered, and the conversion rate skyrocketed for Domino's as compared to the competitive set, that being Pizza Hut, Papa John's, and their e-commerce experience. So I think the idea of allowing guests to personalize their own experience.
Would this build your own hotel room?
Build your own hotel room.
So if I want mushrooms and anchovies on my bed, I could get that?
Then you show the bed, and on your pillow there's a big fish. What does the view look like? What does an enhanced bath experience?
But that's turning the process on its head, right?
But doing it at the CRS level, which is the magic, right? Building the technology that enables, and of course this would be very relative to brand.com as opposed to OTAs. But at the brand.com, you can drive value for the guest in that they can have a more fulfilling, personalized experience on the brand.com versus an OTA. That everyone's happy in that experience. The guest is happier, right? Because they can, they're, as I like to call it, trying the jacket on. They can see what their room's going to be like, and what their view's going to be like, et cetera. So yeah, I think that would dramatically increase conversion rates.
Estella, what do you think?
I would add to what Tim is saying. Really, it is starting with the guest and what that guest wants and that guest experience. So I think natural language search, just saying, I want a room with a balcony, with a nice view, just adapting to what that guest is looking for. One thing that I would like to note is, as you hear us from a CRS perspective and from our thoughts perspective, I would like to point out that from a CRS point of view, when we look at that centralized distribution, we looked at connecting that hotel to their guest. All of these things that you're hearing, from creating room attributes, to learning about where the geo-targeting is coming, to allowing natural language search, et cetera, So to really see CRS as something that is not just connecting hotels to channels, we're connecting hotels to their guests. We happen to do that by connecting them to channels.
Can we afford to do this, Sean, from a PE
I'll
perspective?
keep it
Sounds
quick.
expensive to me.
I think at breakfast this morning we kind of discussed three different buckets of, and one was we talked a lot about personalization. The second was we talked about speed. How can we just make the look to book that much, the conversion that much faster? And so things like where the booking engine process has been split between a widget and the actual platform, they need to be in one kind of system to move the conversion from 5 seconds to, let's say, 3 seconds. And so speed was the second. And the third, I'm drawing a blank, but I'll come back to it and we'll address it a little bit later.
Well, I think one of the comments that Estella made is where the profile resides. And does the profile reside into the PMS? Is the profile appended to the CRS? And I think part of to get that response time is right person, right offer, right time. But how as an industry do we make that happen, right?
I think the other one is service, really. And so when you're the guest and you're actually at, let's say, the website, there are different ways where hotels and technology can automate a lot of that service in a more intelligent manner. So natural language processing we discussed, which is this voice activation, but it's automated from a hotel perspective. We talked about chatbots being the second form of service that we can enable. And the third, I think a lot of that is really powered by the data behind the scenes in the database, which is synthesized by machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms to really power those applications that are interfacing with the guests to improve service and conversion.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. We left ample time, so we want to get to as many of these as we can. And I'm going to start, again, Tim, with you with the first question. The limitations of the CRS prevents added functionality and enhancements. What exactly is being done to get more robust content? I think we covered some of this, but maybe, part of it goes into APIs. And are APIs a big part of this future in order to get this content? And where does Amadeus kind of fit into the APIs are us, opportunity on the horizon?
Sure, great question. Because, right, that whole idea of interfaces and the limitations and making sure everything's agreeing on all sides is that holy grail, right? So, first of all, from Amadeus's perspective, one of the paramount goals was to create a single cloud-native solution that if our customers want, that would include central reservation system, property management system, service optimization, payments, et cetera, all around a central guest profile that serves them all. But at the same time, we recognize that folks might most likely already standardize on a particular PMS that isn't ours. So we need to build it in a way that integrates very well. And so we're taking sort of the enterprise service bus approach. And we actually use that service bus for our own internal systems as well as external systems, and obviously using HDNG specs as much as possible. Again, that's a broad topic in its own right, but really just making sure that we play well with others. I know that's a broad answer, but that's the way.
Estelle?
I agree. We start with the most cohesive way of distributing data that we have today, and we do have such number of integrations, such myriad of messages and message structures. We do have something to start with the standards such as HTNG, but we have to do it in a way where we're even consuming our own services so that it's easier for other players to consume them as well and to feed them to us.
Thanks. Tom, I want to go to you for the next question,
Sure.
because there was a time, I think, when Sabre owned Travelocity, right?
There is,
Okay,
yeah.
not too long ago. Expedia recently invested heavily in a reservations platform. Do you see their newer technology stack and larger guest data warehouse as a threat to the CRS industry?
So I think that their investment will certainly serve a market, and where I really see it serving is more in the situations where hotels want a more, not even a bespoke, but certainly an e-commerce platform to displace providing their own. And coming back to Tim's point about the API-driven approach, a lot of properties, will take the approach of saying, I have enough of a need that I'm going to build my own booking engine, let's say, off of an API platform, sort of providing that level of customization on top of a core platform. So as it relates to something like Expedia investing in a reservations platform, and I think they did that partially through some acquisitions as well, I think the hotels have to ask themselves whether or not you want ostensibly at least your partial competitor, powering your distribution and acting in your best interest to power your distribution.
So Sarah's reminded us always the HEDNA guidelines, HEDNA, but Sean, I'm going to go to you.
I actually do think they are definitely a threat to reservation service providers. I think I've worked in a very similar internet company in the past, where generally like Expedia and the Pricelines, they have to spend in a tremendous amount of marketing dollars to buy traffic, right? And they're actually probably purchasing the same keywords that a lot of hoteliers want to purchase as well. But fundamentally, like the biggest existential threat to those types of companies is too much traffic moving to the direct channel. And so if you're naturally an owner of one of those businesses, the way you diversify your business is to actually move into the direct channel if you can, and provide technology that you use in your other channels to those who need it in their direct channel. And so I think it's a good diversification strategy for Expedia and for Priceline.
Or how about for Pegasus? Because you look at that question, are you ready to manage vacation rental distribution? Sean?
I think, no, I mean, to be honest, I think that's something we will do over the course of maybe 18 to 24 months. Our core customers are hoteliers, to be honest. I think where Pegasus is really focused right now is expanding its data structure to really be the one central data hub as we move forward into the future.
Estella, help us with this question, because it is one that comes up regularly. I'd like your perspective, please. How do you overcome and react quickly to global regulations, data privacy, tax laws, et cetera, to serve your CRS customers so they can continue selling in these countries without interruption?
This is something that all of us here in this panel are constantly looking at. We're looking at complying with GDPR before the deadline. We're looking at complying with all of the security standards. We're looking at doing that for all of our customers, especially independent hotels that are part of our chain codes and that we act as I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, so what we used to call rep companies, so we really do take a very serious approach as to how we plan for this and how we project it to hotel, which is also one of the reasons why I do believe, as you began on your first question, John, that CRSs do not become irrelevant, but in fact they become more important and they evolve because it goes beyond just the distribution portion. It touches on security, it touches again on the profiles, personalization, looking at where the guests are going, and being that ear to the market from what our hotels want, but also a voice to the market as to what we're seeing their guests are wanting. So this is a critical part of what we see and what we plan for in all of our roadmaps year after year and quarter after quarter.
Thank you. That really is helpful. Thank you, Estella.
I will say
Yeah, please. Tim.
that quickly and government regulations, that's kind of an oxymoron. So.
It's very true. Yeah, I want to go back to you, Tom.
Sure.
Because this to me it comes back to the holy grail of conversion, right? Mm-hmm. And what we talked about, especially with anonymity. So when you look at the future of the CRS, especially with what we're calling intelligent bundling, right? Ancillary services in anonymity, how close are we to that vision that you've just articulated to the audience? Is this something that we could do within the next 12 to 24 months, or is that anonymity targeting to that level of conversion readily available? Give us your time frame, your horizon.
So we think we're less than 12 months away from doing that, because a lot of the information, it's all things that can be leveraged today. When you think even about the fact that the GDSs do real-time shops, right? So the fact that you have that information about where that agent is located, right, in what particular market they're in, so that you can do that sort of incentivization based upon whatever data that you can gather. Essentially, it's already there today. It's somewhat similar to what Ideas had mentioned during the last session. Is a lot of the information when you think about that dynamic segmentation, a lot of that's possible today, but we're trying to look at the way in which we're actually leveraging the use of that particular information, which often today just gets not leveraged to do any type of personalization.
And it's fair to say, and Amadeus Saber, you're all investing in large travel data warehouses. And as you mentioned, one of the key things you just said was you have real-time shop information. You also have real-time transaction information. So it's not as if you're thinking about building something. You've been building something now for the better part of probably 10, 15 years. And so that to me, if you had to say the walk away from this, that anonymity and that opportunity to target an IP or a pseudo city with real-time data is an opportunity for increased conversion.
And that's why I mentioned about the kind of optimization of the ancillary bookings, because we have that data. We know the hotels that use it generate a ton of revenue for it. And we're looking at, when you talk about conversions, it's really about increasing that kind of total RevPAR and even really kind of GoPAR. So we know that that's an area where just sort of some better conversion in that area will really drive results for hotels.
And it's 00 on the clock, and I know that we're holding you up from lunch. So I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank you for a great questions. Thank you, everyone.